right. So I had a furry little nugget for about 4.5 years. He died. His name was Roger. He was a black and white, long-haired cat, really adorable. When I brought him in to get vaccines one day, one of the vets noticed that his heartbeat was a little irregular. And then I had him seen by a second vet, and she confirmed. And, she said, with this, there's a possibility that he could be fine. Some cats, are born with heart disease and they can get on medication and live really long and happy lives, or it can end a lot shorter. And COVID ended up happening, and it was tough to get in to see the cardiologist. And I finally had an appointment booked, and he was doing fine, actually, really well. And in December, it was a year in December. So December 2021 or 2022, I was watching him under the Christmas tree, and I could see that the way he was breathing, he was really fighting for it. And at this time I was working at a walk-in vet clinic, and we had been seeing a lot of cats that ended up having upper respiratory infections. So in my head, I was thinking, maybe he has an upper respiratory infection, and he was a little raspy sounding, but in general, it was just a bit more than usual. And I reached out to his vet and, was counting the heartbeats, and she had me take videos and whatnot, and said, just to be safe, why don't you bring him in the morning and we'll do x-rays, first thing and see what's going on. And I also had an appointment scheduled for 2 weeks from then to see the cardiologist, but I brought him in the next morning, and his lungs were basically filled with fluid. So, medicine could have helped a little bit, but it probably wouldn't have given him much more time. So I decided that it would be best to not have him suffer and deal with that quality of life, and decided to say goodbye to him there. And
oh gosh,
definitely not expecting that. I am just like an undying optimist. So in my head, I was naively thinking it's going to be fine. And when she came up, I could tell in her eyes before she even said anything that it wasn't going to be good. But she was wonderful. Made the experience a lot easier, because it was just shocking, overwhelming, and heartbreaking at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially him not knowing what's going on, and not loving being at the vet or being around a lot of other people. But she put on a fire, gave us time to just be together before she came in to do the deed. And for everybody that can't see, I just did a little back. And then, I had to walk away knowing that I was leaving without the best soul that's ever came into my life. Honestly, growing up, we always had dogs, and most of us in my family, we were allergic to cats, including myself, but certain danders I seem to be okay with. So he was the first cat that I had ever had, and I always thought I was going to be a dog person. But I love dogs so much, but I'm so drawn to cats and their personalities. And I felt like he really saw me and really did become my true companion. I have been single for the majority of the last 7 years, and he was the one that was there. I don't live with anybody or, have any children. So it was him and I, and it was really special, but nothing is permanent. And, it just reminded me that you really have to be present for everyone in our lives and really do our best to make the most out of our time together.
Yeah. That was really fast too. Like you had to face it head on and deal with it like immediately at the moment that you took him to the vet, which probably you weren't expecting. You were alone too, right? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
That adds probably a layer of difficulty, I'm sure.
Yeah, it did. And at the same time, I felt like I didn't want to be around anybody. I just wanted to be alone because I knew the importance of sitting with that and not trying to bypass those emotions and be distracted in any way. And I don't know. It's just because it was always him and me, there were times that we were at my parents' and everybody that got to know him loved him. He was a little temperamental, but to know him, everybody loved Roger. He had such a personality, but yeah, it was him and me. So I just felt like it would be strange to be with anybody else in that moment. And the vet that I did bring him to, her and I built a relationship because she did work at my clinic as well. So it felt really comforting to have her there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. It's hard, I think, in moments like these when no one else really can understand or feel what you're feeling. And so I think it's totally natural. I was in sort of the same way in wanting to just kind of let myself deal with it in my own space. My mom was here, but I almost, after we had to put my dog down, I almost would have preferred for no one to be here for a little while, because you want to just move through those thoughts and feelings on your own without having somebody giving their input.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the thoughts that come up in those moments?
Oh, gosh, what didn't come up? I felt guilt and shame for not taking him sooner to the cardiologist, thinking I could have prevented it. I felt so alone and just was trying to piece together how I was going to be able to move on, just with the weight of having that hole in my heart and knowing that, I'm never going to see him again. It was the most devastating experience I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting because I had a therapy session months later and I said, I can't let go of him. Like, I just can't get him off my mind and I miss him and I can't, like, even now you guys see me tearing up, and I've been okay to talk about him without getting too emotional, but I think it's also just being able to compartmentalize it all. But we did EMDR for that. And it was interesting because my therapist asked me when the last time was when I felt unconditional love from somebody other than Roger. And it was my grandmother. And that was a few years prior. And I just thought, wow, like the two, that makes so much sense. The pain and the similarities and that unconditional love.
Yeah, it's a sweet thing, but it's also, once it isn't there, I at least felt very lost, because like I said, when I went through this, was you get almost used to having it, sometimes to the point that you take it for granted. And we don't realize how much that really holds us up and gets us through challenging times, especially if we're lonely. And then when it's not there, you're almost kind of grasping for something, right? Did you get your cat when he was very young? And so you saw him go through stages, and did he live through different stages with you as well?
I got him when he was about 1, they estimated, and he only lived until he was 6.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So, unfortunately, not too many stages, but I feel like it was really high quality, the time that I did have with him. He was playful. He was energetic, very chatty, the chattiest cat I've ever experienced. And just cats are all very special and unique, obviously, but he just had this personality about him. Like, he was everything, and you see him strut around. He was a big boy, almost 14 pounds.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And he wasn't fat. He was just very big, and his cute black and white hair.
Did you take him places? I mean, you mentioned taking him to your parents' house, but did you like take him on trips with you or do anything like that?
No, I didn't want to stress him out. So I would always have somebody watch him if I ever went anywhere, and it had to be somebody that I trusted a lot. So typically it was my mom or my one friend, Melanie, that lived close by. She would come and watch him, which was great.
How did they feel after you had to put him down?
Everybody was heartbroken. Yeah, my family. I went over to see them, and my nephews were there, and my parents, and they all were very emotional about it. And my one friend, Chanel, who was on the podcast.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Her and I would be on the phone all the time, and and then I would just start talking to Roger, and she's like, okay, I'm still here. And he would be talking in the background, and they like built their own little rapport, which was really funny. Aww. But she was even pretty sad about it, even though they had a little competition for my attention.
What was your reaction to everybody being that emotional?
You know, it really validated to me how significant his presence was, and just being here, even though it was for such a short amount of time. I feel like it was so impactful, because when you had his attention, you knew that there was a special connection there. And I don't know, he just had this superior complex to him, and he was my little king. So yeah, it validated that, and also made me sad, because I just felt like, I don't know, he just, maybe he wasn't meant to be here longer. But I feel like his life could have been incredible. It would have been, a great long life, but we never know when it's going to end for any of us. So
yeah, it's so true. We're dealing with a lot of loss in my family this year for some reason. And I was just talking with my mom about it yesterday, humans and furry loved ones. And it just makes you take a step back and think about today in this current moment. Like I was talking with CJ a little bit before this about how I'm trying not to spend too much time working now and be just a little bit more present. And I think some of that came from losing my dog this year and feeling like time is short, right? Do you feel like you've had a little bit of time now to process this with your cat? Do you feel like you're experiencing any changes in yourself, or like in your mental state, or how you're approaching life because of?
Yeah, first off, I want to say I'm so sorry for the loss you're going through. Yeah, I have noticed a shift. My one friend, she asked me last year in the early spring if I would want to watch 2 of her cats while they had some work done on their house. And I said, absolutely, because I love her cats. I love all of her animals. And I watched them, and having them here, I started thinking maybe I'm ready to bring new life into the house, and saying goodbye to them. That wave of sadness came over me again. And it made me think that I'm not ready for, anyone else to come in. And then I just recently, a few months ago, started looking online again, at City of Buffalo Animal Shelter and different rescues. And I wanted to get a bonded pair just because I'm balancing work and school. So I didn't want to leave anyone alone. I hated that with Roger, knowing that he was alone, even though he wanted me out and to have that alone time.
Roger sounds like fun.
Yeah, he was really funny. But I started looking, and then I saw brothers, and I went and I met them, and I ended up being in the little room where they were in for over a half hour. And when I came out, the employee, I scared her, and she goes, I forgot you were in there. It was so fun. I was just sitting on the floor with these two boys, and I fell in love with them. And that day, I talked to the person that was the volunteer for them, and she talked to my landlord, and everything happened within a few hours, where she said, they're yours if you want them. And and I ended up bringing them home just, maybe 2 months ago.
Oh, and yay. What did you name them?
So their names were Midnight and Tom, which Midnight naturally was the one that was all black. Like, come on now, the original. So Midnight's name is now Arthur. And then there's the black and white one. He has a little bit of white on him. His name is Archibald. So I call him Archie and Artie.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you.
I'm sure they do too. You have saved some more, right?
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. I know we have to take our time, but I just saw a puppy at the park today, and I was talking with the lady who adopted the dog, and part of me was like, do they have more of these?
Yeah.
I might be ready, but I think it's wonderful that you saved 2 more cats.
Thank you. I will say, I don't know what I was expecting. I knew they couldn't replace, what Roger and I had. And our bonds are only going to strengthen over time. But and I fall in love with them more and more each day. They're both really silly, but they almost remind me of, Roger's personality split into 2. Like, the one is very silly, very affectionate, quirky. And the other one is kind of like, you can touch me when I allow it. And I will cuddle you, but you can't cuddle me. So they're funny in that way. And the one day, just a few weeks ago, I received an email from UB, and I was nervous, not knowing if I would get into the program. It's for Masters of Social Work. And I opened up the email and saw that I was accepted, and immediately thought, the one soul that I wanted to celebrate this with is not here. And, just got, pretty emotional over that, but I believe that he is around. And I talked to my friend Chanel a couple times. I've had readings. The one time we were just texting, and I said, it's killing me, like, how much I miss Roger. And she just started messaging me and then called me. And I'm always not always, but I'm typically the one that will call her without giving a heads up, like, hey, I'm going to call you, because she doesn't really love that. We've been friends since 9th grade, so it's okay. But she ended up calling me, and she goes, hope it's okay. I just need to tell you, because Roger is basically communicating with me. And 2 different times, basically the summary of what he said. He's always the one coming through, though. It's him or my grandma for the most part, which is just really special. And the first time I had asked how he felt about having the two other cats, this was when I was cat sitting, how he felt about having them in the apartment. And I guess he had said that he was happy for me because he knew that they brought joy, but if he was here, they wouldn't really get along.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yes, spot on. And then she had mentioned that, you know, he brought up how a lot of cats don't need the attention that like dogs need, for example. And I treated him like he did and showed him every day how loved he was. And, and that was basically very appreciated. And he really felt that. And that what was going to happen regardless of whether he went to the cardiologist or not. And to not, you know, beat myself up over that. But yeah, some of the things, like even, you know, seeing a little bit of movement in the corner of my eye. She said, that's him if you see that. And I do. And there are times where I would just be laying in bed and all of a sudden I would hear him talking when he would come. Like it wasn't a meow, it was talking. And is it my imagination or is he around, you know? Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes like the feeling of him jumping on my bed, I would feel and wonder, but it could be in my imagination too.
I mean, I've had experiences like that with my wife.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I finally went to a medium last year after being told for 3 years to go by various people. And I had some of that confirmed.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Definitely the thing out of the corner of the eye is supposed to be spirit.
How does that make you feel? Like, as it first is like alarming and then you're like, oh, they're here. So that's good. Is it calming or is it strange?
I mean, for me, and then Nicole, you can answer, but like it in the beginning, because I had experiences like very, very soon after she died that I wasn't prepared for. And it freaked the fuck out of me. Where I was just like scared to be in my house because I had somebody who's just like, oh, Ariana's here and this and that. And then I like had an instance where there was just these weird phenomenons that were happening. And I was just like, I love you and all, but like, you're scaring the fuck out of me right now. And it wasn't until like last year or the end of last year, like this year, where I was like, okay, if this is real, I'm okay. I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Nicole?
For me, it wasn't scary because at first I didn't see anything before she had mentioned it. And then after she did is when I think I was more aware of it.
You became conscious of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'd see it and it almost just felt like a little light, you know, so it just warmed my heart.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's good. And now he has extra presence in your home now with your two cats and the split personality.
Yeah, I think so.
What was your experience with EMDR? I'm assuming that's been a big part of the healing for you or the moving through the grief.
Absolutely. Oh, it just really, it cut that heaviness, you know, just kind of shredded it. I'm imagining like a really thick weighted blanket, you know, and I kind of shredded it to pieces. So I felt like the weight was lifted and just the way that those emotions drew a parallel to what I felt with my grandmother and also feelings of regret and things that, you know, I don't know, like I could have been more patient and just different things that I felt with her. Nothing severe or things that were unsaid. I said everything I wanted to, but things like that came up, and it was really helpful in that way. And just knowing that I I did everything I could with what I had at the time. And, and I think for me, as cheesy as that saying is, where it's like the grief, like the heaviness and the pain of the grief that you experience is evidence that you loved or were loved. And I love that statement, that quote or saying so much, because I really feel like it's true. And now I think about that when I think of him, and just feel more grateful and happy because I was able to have him in my life, instead of feeling emptiness and knowing that he's never coming back,
That's a really beautiful way to look at that. I actually think I really needed to hear you say that. Because I still feel that pain, but it's really just, missing her, because I loved her so much. And a nice way to kind of spin that feeling in my brain is to think how grateful I am that I had that time with her and that we had this life together. It's a really nice way to look at it.
And do you feel like they choose us?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everything happens for a reason, the good and the bad. We're all here talking today for not wonderful reasons, not good reasons, right? But it does, things seem to make sense in hindsight in some way. And she definitely was meant to be in my life when she came in for that time.
It's just having that love. It's such a gift, and knowing that they chose us, and we'll continue to have them in our lives, and they'll choose us for a reason. And to now look at it with this appreciation, I almost feel more appreciative for every moment I have with these new boys because of Roger. Yeah. Navigating life with Roger, it was being a new cat mom. I was nervous to pick him up because when I was younger, I picked up a stray cat and ended up having to get 9 rabies shots because they didn't know if it had rabies or not. So ever since then, I've been afraid to pick up cats, but I was just smothering this poor cat that wanted to say hi for a second. It's like Elmira. But when I saw him, we're at the shelter that he was at, he was in his own room because he didn't get along with the other cats. And I picked him up and he quickly wanted to get down, and it's like, okay. And then I left the door open. I was just a mess and really nervous and wanted him to like me. Aww. And he just started strutting out of the room. They're like, oh no, he can't leave that room. I'm like, oh, okay. And trying to block him. He's still like, who do you think you are? And he was always that way. Like, even when I brought him home, they say to keep them confined to one room to get them used to it, not overstimulated. Right away, he was pulling out, pulling under the door.
Let me be free. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, all right, buddy, this is your place now.
What's the experience of, you have these 2 new cats, you're developing this love for them. So what is that experience to love these cats, be in a new relationship with them, while knowing you had such a deep, intimate relationship with Roger? How do you reconcile that?
It's difficult, honestly. I feel like I gave it enough time to be able to show up for them the way that they deserve. And that was the thing that was most important to me, is I don't want to bring anyone into the home that I'm not going to be able to be fully present for and start a new relationship with. And at first I started thinking, I felt regret. And I started thinking, I don't know if I'm going to love them the way that I loved Roger. And I can't remember who I said that to. And I said, of course you're not. Like, it's going to be completely different. And and it is. And I sat with it and I thought, I brought these cats home after they were given up and, in a shelter, and it wasn't fair. So give it time. Just like, it would be in a human relationship. And I just kind of got out of my head a little bit and allowed myself to feel instead of think about it. And that really helped, just remaining present. And since I decided to do that and shift the way that I approached the relationship with him and didn't compare it to Roger, it's been such a positive, significant change. And I feel that they really notice it too.
Wow.
You seem very wise. You've said a lot that's, you said a lot that's like really resounding messages. So is there anything else you would recommend for somebody also going through this?
Let me bring out my notes.
I was going to say, damn.
She's ready.
She came prepared.
She's ready.
Honestly, I would say, it's been brought up consistently, throughout the podcast about allowing yourself to mourn and, really putting effort into the mourning and then allowing yourself to fully grieve and know that, I think it's so important to remind ourselves that it's okay to, first off, having pets versus human loss. I know that's come up a bunch of times and it, I have conversations with my friends and family about it, and it's like, it's a soul regardless. At the end of the day, it's a soul that we have a connection with and we experience love with. So it's important to really go through the grieving process and remember that it's not linear and we're not going to be perfect in that. And I think communication with our loved ones about how to best show up for us and what we need and what we don't need, I think that's important. But at the end of the day, just really being there for yourself. It's something that I found to be most valuable is the self-compassion and giving myself an actual hug when I need it and being tender. And even, I'll, as weird as it sounds, I'll gently rub my arm.
I do that.
You do?
When I'm in meditations, I'll do meditations specifically to show myself love.
Yeah.
And like physically hug, just like you said, or like I'll rub my legs.
Yeah.
Just like an actual affectionate touch on myself.
Yeah. That's really nice.
Do you like it, Liz? Do you feel it?
I'm totally gonna do that.
Yeah.
I do it sometimes subconsciously, but like now that I think about it, it makes sense. This is our only body. This is our home.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense that we have to give ourselves love too. And, they recommend something like, 9 hugs a day.
Yeah.
If you can't get that from other people, you got to do it for yourself, right?
Yeah. I try to hug as many people as I can. Not everybody wants that physical touch. So.
Well, this is why we get pets, right? This is where the cats and dogs come in. Sometimes we don't really give them a choice. They have to give us the hug.
Full blown Elmira comes out of all the.
That's how it is with our dog. She gets hugs no matter what, even if she doesn't want them.
That's right.
Like
no
too bad.
Consent. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm curious how you knew when you were ready. Like, what did that process look like for you to get new cats, to be specific?
Yeah. I loved the idea of having life back in my home. It felt quiet. I play music and we'll have friends over here and there, but for the most part, I really like my space for me and just thought like, I think I'm ready to build new relationships in the home and have some liveliness. And it was, off and on, I would think, I think I might be ready now. And I would start looking, and then it's almost like going on the dating apps and delete the app. And it's like, I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
And then the one day I just thought like, I think I'm ready. I'm just ready. And I don't think I'm going to get more ready. So now's the time. And like I said, I did feel regret and sadness and comparison and all of that. But And I allowed myself to feel those things and didn't feel shame or, negativity towards those emotions coming up because it's only natural, and allowed myself to feel that and move forward. That's all we can do.
That's beautiful. There's a lot of intentionality in the way that you've grieved and processed this, and permission is the other word that keeps coming up for me, which I think is super important. And that was one of the best gifts that my uncle, or Ashley's dad, when my wife was dying and then after she passed, he was just like, you have to trust yourself and give yourself that permission to do what you know is right for you and your kids. And then, like, as in regards to dating, it was the same thing where I'm just like, let me first think about dating. And I was like, nah, that doesn't feel good. And then I'm like, well, let me think about it again. Okay, that feels okay. And then it's this slow process of like, what if I just download a dating app? What does that feel like?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, that's okay. What if I create a profile? Like, and it's these little micro steps and checking in with myself. Like, is this okay?
Yeah.
Does this feel okay with me? And then just moving through the steps in that way. So yeah, I think it's beautiful to see the intentionality and the permission that you've given yourself through this process.
Yeah. And I feel like that, it sounds like that is even a little bit of the way we work with ourselves when we're working with like our inner child, like, does this feel okay? Is this okay? We'll just keep, and do baby steps, because it seems to be the best way.
Yeah. Listening to yourself as best you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard because when you go through challenging times, sometimes I think part of our human nature in protecting ourselves is to like shut down. But Nicole, you seem very in tune with yourself. It shows. And that's why I think you said you were wise, because it seems like you have figured out at least a little bit how to navigate this.
You.
Have you been through a loss like this before? Maybe not with a pet that was yours, but is this stuff that you knew before, or has this just come through the loss of Roger?
Honestly, I've experienced a lot of losses, my grandparents being the majority of them, and some friends over the years, but I've never allowed myself to fully embrace it and just allow, giving myself the space and the permission to go through it the way I did. And I think the reason why is because of the therapy that I've been going through for the last couple of years, and how wonderful my therapist has been with me and showing me the importance of showing up for myself and, just giving myself buttloads of self-compassion, because that's something I lacked in the past. So I sometimes wonder if it's because I hadn't allowed myself before, and that's why subconsciously I did this time. Because I know with my grandma, she was the most recent one, and that just really, really killed me.
Yeah.
With her, I did kind of shut down from that and really just kind of moved on and tried to block out those emotions so that it wouldn't slow me down and feel so heavy.
So some of that maybe came up through this as well. And obviously your therapist has helped a lot, but it sounds like maybe you're still releasing too through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It takes time.
It does. And when he did the one specific EMDR session where he paired the two of them, it was just like complete release of built up energy.
I'm glad that it's been helpful for you.
Yeah. Have you ever tried EMDR, Liz?
I haven't. No.
Oh, it's so good. As the first modality that ever made some impact on me.
I need to check this out.
Yeah, EMDR and somatic therapy, like I swear by those.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for those listening that don't understand what EMDR and what does it stand for? Like eye movement detection, something or other. But basically, it's disrupting your processing and like your working memory. Sorry, it disrupts your working memory by either looking at a light that's blinking, or you have to follow someone's fingers, or you're doing tapping on your legs while you're recalling traumatic moments. And the idea is that it lessens the reaction that you physically have to those, because you become more and more distant in the sense of emotionally triggered by it.
I see.
Mm-hmm. And it's super, super fucking effective.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard, but it's effective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very intense. And the biggest thing is bilateral eye movement. And
okay.
Yeah. And within one session, it goes from having such a physical reaction to thinking, okay, this happened.
Yeah.
And that's it. Yeah. It's wild. Like, it still happened, but you don't have the same reaction to it that you did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what we like to do to end the show is we would love to know one or two memories about Roger, one of your favorite memories from him.
There are two reoccurring memories that I had, but it's coming home. I'm on the third floor in an apartment, and I would open the front door, and I have to go up two flights of stairs, and I would hear him talking.
No.
Yeah. As soon as I opened the front door, and he would be right down by the door waiting for me. Yeah. I'm like, how do you know? There's several other people that live in this building. And then the other one would be, I had soup, and I had a piece of pita bread, and it was like a half of a pita bread. And he took he moved over my lap, went to the TV tray. Yes, I have TV trays. And he grabbed it with his mouth and just pulled this whole piece of pita across me. Yeah, he loved starchy carbs, like wraps, pizza crust, tortillas.
I have never heard of a cat acting in these ways.
No.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Roger.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, guys. This is a great conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.